Hi, welcome to memleaks. Today we're going to be going over setting up a C++ development environment utilizing VirtualBox and Ubuntu. So a couple of prerequisites. First things you're going to need are VirtualBox. If you visit their website on the downloads page, you can see whichever version you need for your specific host OS. The second requirement will be an OS to run within the VM. For the purposes of this video, I will be using Ubuntu, the latest long-term support version 22. The version here should not matter too much, but for the sake of following along exactly, you may want to grab this same version. Okay, once you have those downloaded, go ahead and start up VirtualBox. We're going to be creating a new VM. I will name it whatever, doesn't make a difference. Let's just call it memleaks Ubuntu 22. I have a dedicated storage drive that I keep my VMs on. And then Linux, Ubuntu. Memory size, this will vary depending on your hardware. I'm fortunate enough to have a good amount, so I will give up or allocate about 16 gig. Alright, and then we will create a new virtual hard disk, which we will be installing our OS onto momentarily. Let's go ahead and click create. I have one with the same name already. That's okay. For this, we'll just modify this very quickly. Okay. File size. This is the size of your virtual hard disk. I recommend increasing this if you're going to be doing anything substantial with this VM. I do plan to use this VM for some future tutorials, so I will just go ahead and make this an even 200 gigabytes. The rest we can leave at defaults, VDI, disk image, and dynamically allocated, that is fine. Let's go ahead and create. Once we've created the machine, there's a couple settings that become available to us, which we should most likely change in order for everything to run a little smoother. Two big quality of life features are a shared clipboard and drag and drop. I recommend setting both of these to bidirectional. This will allow you to use your clipboard to copy or paste information from either your host to the VM, or the inverse of that, VM to host. Likewise, drag and drop, you can select a folder, say in Windows Explorer, if your host machine is Windows, and drag that into your VM, drop it, and it copies over into your virtual hard disk. Same for the reverse direction, obviously, hence bidirectional. Okay. We've already set our memory, but the processors you most likely will want to increase. Depending on your hardware, again, this number might vary. I think 4 is a good number to shoot for. Feel free to exceed that, or if you don't have as much, things will still run fine with less than 4. Okay. Display, I'm going to bump my video memory up to 32. This will also depend on your specific setup, but something around this number is usually pretty good. Okay, storage. This is where we're going to be selecting our installation image. Basically similar to if you were to set your boot order in your BIOS. This is setting an image that will be used at boot time for the VM to operate off of. We're going to be using the Ubuntu 22 ISO file that we downloaded previously. So go ahead and select that. And let's move on. Audio, network. Network, I recommend using network address translation. It just seems to work well. Occasionally you might have to switch over to bridged, but NAT is a nice solution if it just works out of the box. Otherwise you'll have to troubleshoot that a little. But that's more rare that you'll hit that scenario. Okay, and the rest of these we can ignore for now. Go ahead and click OK and start up the VM. So now in this window you can see that the VM is booting. You're going to want to select try or install Ubuntu. The try portion of that is typically with Linux distros. You can run them as a live CD or live image, which lets you try out the OS. So you boot into it, but nothing is persistent really. So it's more of like a trial run on your hardware. We're going to be installing onto the virtual disk that we created during our VM setup. Okay, now once in here, you're going to want to click Install Ubuntu. Choose your keyboard layout and language. I'll be using English. We're going to do a normal installation. We can download updates. You can leave these at the default. I will install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi hardware, just in case there's proprietary drivers I need for my setup. Okay, this next step, installation type. This is referring to your virtual disk, so do not worry. This is not in relation to your host machine. You're not going to be erasing your host OS or anything on that disk. This is solely within the virtual disk. So go ahead and leave it on erase disk and install Ubuntu. And click Install Now. And this is just to confirm everything I just spoke about. Okay, where are you? Go ahead and change that to match your location if you wish, or it doesn't really matter. Change it to whatever. Your name, we will just use memleaks for the sake of this. Memleaks VirtualBox, that is fine. Password, I'll just use a dummy password for now. Okay. Alright, and now I'm going to let this install and skip ahead a bit in this video. Okay, and once installation is complete, you'll be prompted to restart your VM. Go ahead and click Restart Now. Don't worry, there's nothing you have to remove. VirtualBox will take care of that for you. The ISO image we had previously set won't be booted the subsequent restart. But you do have to press enter. And we will be resizing this. There's just another step that will make the resizing a little bit smoother, which is why I have not done so yet. Okay, and once the VM has rebooted and you're prompted to log in, go ahead and do so. Alright, I'm going to skip all of this stuff because we just don't really need it. Okay. And now I'm going to pull up a terminal. So one of the first things I usually do after installing a new OS is to make sure I have the latest updates. For that I'll be using apt. So let's go ahead and sudo apt update. This is just updating the indexes to make sure that apt is able to fetch the latest information. And we're going to do a sudo apt full upgrade, just to make sure all of our packages are up to date and to grab any packages or uninstall any unnecessary packages that might have been present before. Okay, and once that completes, the next step we're going to be doing is to install VirtualBox tools, or I forget the exact name that it's called. Guest editions, there we go. VirtualBox, or VMware tools is the alternative for VMware users. But yes, before we do that, there's a step we have to perform. We have to sudo apt install build essential and the Linux headers for our installed version. I recommend using this substitution command in order to make sure you got the correct version. Okay, and we'll go ahead and let that complete. After it does complete, go ahead and go to Devices, Insert Guest Edition CD Image. And that should cause this disk to appear in the toolbar. Auto run is what we want to execute. I'm just going to run it from here. And let's let that install. Okay, and once it is done, we should probably reboot to make sure that everything is installed properly. Okay, and once the reboot completes, let's go ahead and log back in. Okay, and if we set it to scaled mode, that does not look very good. Let's try something else. Okay, and the reason that's happening is because of the aspect ratio. So let's right click on your desktop, go to display settings, and the resolution. My aspect ratio is 16, let's see, I believe it is 16:9. So let's switch to that, apply, and that looks much better. Okay, and now we have a nice window that can scale. It will be constrained by the aspect ratio. I believe there's a better way to solve this, but for now this is good enough. And the next step we're going to do is install Visual Studio Code, which is a really useful IDE. The plugins really are the powerful portion of it that makes things much easier when developing. So go ahead and go to Visual Studio to the download page, and for obviously whichever OS you're on, but we'll be using Ubuntu. Okay, let's wait for this to complete. Once complete, we will pull up the terminal, should have just looked that up from the previous time, and go to our downloads folder. Okay, and you should have that .deb file. Go ahead and install it. Also, this CD, once we've installed the tools, go ahead and get rid of that. I like to get rid of these as well because I don't really have a use for them. If you do receive this message or something similar, it could be because of permissions. So if you'll notice here, the execution permission is not set. So let's go ahead. We'll do 775 on that file, and let's try that again. And there we go. Okay, so now if we go to our applications, we should have Visual Studio Code, which we do. I'm going to add that to my favorites bar because we will be using that very often. And let's launch it. Go ahead and select your color scheme or theme, I guess. I'll use dark modern. And there you go. We are now set up with Visual Studio Code within an Ubuntu 22 virtual machine. We'll go into more details on how to start writing C++ code, but for now, this is the development environment that I will be using for those tutorials. So you might want to recreate this environment moving forward in order to follow along to more exact. Okay, and thank you everyone. Go ahead and like and subscribe if you feel like it. Otherwise, no need. And I will see you all in the next video. Thank you.